I didn't do that great. And so at 28, I moved out to Los Angeles to see if I could make it in rate movies or something like that. But I chose a career for money, and so there was no passion and no joy. Students aren't ready for the workforce. People are talking about it, but nobody's really doing much about it. But you better know what you're getting yourself into, or you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. But you don't want to be miserable for 30 plus years in a field just to make money.
Mike, welcome into the Insiders Career Club podcast. How are you today?
Good, Cindy. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you very much. We've got a lot to talk about. I'm really excited to talk to you. So why don't you give us a thumbnail sketch of your career history and background?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mike Wysocki. Basically, my lifestyle, a career in a nutshell. I grew up in the Boston area, went to school back out there at UMass, and from there I started my corporate America career in the Boston area. I didn't do that great, and so at 28, I moved out to Los Angeles to see if I could make it in rate movies or something like that, and of course that didn't do well. Got into tech sales, and from there, did okay, and so I moved up and I talk a lot about that, but I chose a career for money, and so there was no passion and no joy, so I make sure I talk to the younger people about that these days. And then I moved over here to Hawaii, and living over here, I published a book after years of research about career readiness. And so I talk about myself, how I should have prepared for corporate America, for the workforce, because I didn't, and what happens if you don't. And I give strong and suggestive advice on how to prepare for the workforce. Moreover, the book entails 101 careers by the people who actually work them. Each was asked 20 plus questions, majority of 5+ years in their field, broken down into Holland's occupational themes, received endorsements from Harvard, Stanford, UMass, a lot of the top schools, a few awards. Yeah, I know. And since then, I've spoken at 26 institutions from Massachusetts to Maui. And I'm working on my second book and have hundreds of YouTube videos about career readiness. So my world is, as you heard 17 times, career readiness, helping the next generation. Yeah, prepare, because I got no help. So that's my world in a nutshell. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And you do have another book coming out, right? Next year?
Yeah. My second book of the trilogy, I hope to come out in the spring. And basically, instead of talking about what I should have done, I went directly to the source. What are the students in college doing to prepare for the workforce? Asking them 30 plus questions. I asked students from all over the states, and I went to good schools, but I didn't go to the Ivies, or I don't think anybody in the top 50, but I'm asking them 30 plus questions, and the responses are amazing. And the good news is all the national data up there, nobody asked half of the questions. So this data and information is going to be something that nobody's ever seen, or nobody's even asked questions about. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. This is year 2025, and nobody's asked these questions or took the data. It's nuts. So good stuff.
Okay. All right. So career readiness. What are the biggest challenges that you feel young adults face when preparing for their careers today?
Oh, you get 18 hours. Okay. So here's the world as I see it. You have industry on one side of the fence, and they're complaining. They're like, the students aren't ready for the workforce. On the flip side, you have education, who's supposed to prepare them for the workforce. But education is like, we're all getting paid. Why do we need to do any more? We're still getting students applying. Even though it's less, they're still getting the money. So there are some schools that are out there trying to analyze and put the two together, which is great. But also, there's already schools doing it, like the top 50 top schools. I always tell people, I go, look at schools like Northeastern University and copy what they're actually doing. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Their students are career ready from day one. And so I've spoken at a variety of schools, and the differences between the top 50, top 75 to the rest of the high schools or the colleges is unbelievable. The students aren't getting prepared. They have no idea what's going on. I ask them some basic questions, and it's nothing. Because the fact is, it's a big issue. People are talking about it, but nobody's really doing much about it. And so there's a handful of us out there doing some good stuff. But
Mhm.
the fact is, we need to really take this a lot more seriously than it's been taken.
Well, I totally agree. And the problem is, I don't know if you checked out my profile, but I was in talent acquisition for well over 25 years. And when I was with a major health care company, an HMO, I hired nothing but nurses. And at the time, new nurses and people coming into the hospital system are very closely monitored because, right, it can be life and death, right? So they're very closely monitored. They have very, they get their degrees and whatever, they get their licenses, but then they come into the hospital and they're trained again and they're monitored. And there's a lot of regulations around it. I don't want to say restrictions, regulations. So even at that, the managers that I worked with to hire nurses very often felt strongly that those new nurses were not prepared for the workforce. They weren't getting the proper technical training or even bedside manner kind of training. And this was in 2000. This is 25 years ago. And so my director of nursing at the time decided to get together the people in the hospital, the managers, the schools, and talk about it. Now, at the time, I thought that was great. I don't think anybody's really doing much more than that, if they are even doing that now. And I think one of the biggest things that I see is that they don't have the right work ethic attitude. They aren't willing to come in. They think they can come in and play with their cell phones, play on the computer, and do all kinds of stuff and not be productive and busy. That's one of the biggest things. But there are other things as well. So share a little bit about what you have found from that perspective.
Yeah, it's funny. I just read on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. One of my buddies in the industry, he did that. He brings it with career and technical education. He's big in Georgia, and he basically noted, he's like, "Hey, I bring in an etiquette coach for the students," and I'm like, "Oh my God, Jason, that's amazing. You have to do it more often." So here's what I'm seeing a lot is a lot of the schools and all like that are trying to pinpoint, try to focus the student into a couple different careers or whatever, which is fine and interesting. Test the waters, see what you like, see what interests you, but you have to have the basics as well. And I always say the career readiness ties into, there's a vast amount of information, but I'll go into something right off the top is they used to call it soft skills. Now they call it power skills or professional skills, but it really doesn't matter what the hell they call it because it's just like, it boils down to, are the students taking classes about public speaking? And I inform them, I go, there's many reasons why you need public speaking. I go, one, it exudes confidence. That's an important thing right there. Because the fact is, for John Bowe and wrote the book called I Have Something to Say, as well as the National Institute of Health, people prefer, this is shocking, death over public speaking. So people fear it a lot.
Yeah, they
So the
do.
fact is, people need to get over that. But I also tell the students, I go, there's a differential how, when you compete against somebody else for an opportunity, I go, the person that doesn't want to do public speaking, there's your 1% victory. I always talk about little victories here and there. I learned it from this book about Tom Freeze, who wrote a book about sales. He goes, just do little wins and things will work out. So if they understand public speaking, they not only gain confidence, but if they work at a company, an organization, and that organization is expanding and they're opening a new office, we'll say in another city, there's a chance to move up the ladder. So we speak about that. The other thing I push down on is writing, making sure they know how to properly write email. So the fact about it is, you don't go, "Hey, Cindy, what up?" It's like, "Hey, it's like, Cindy, here's the situation, blah, blah, blah," and know how to do that. Because one of the weaknesses I see a lot these days is the follow-up. They'll go for an interview and they'll talk to somebody, yet they won't follow up with them. And I'm always shocked. I go, it doesn't have to be, 18 paragraphs, just a couple sentences. I go, you got to
Mhm.
remember, if the person that you think is going to win this gig doesn't do a follow-up and you do, but you coming in second or third or whatever, and if for some reason in your head, you'll move right up to the top. I go, it's just these little imperative issues. And I go, when it comes to working with teams, I go, be aware. You don't work with your buddies, the people you hang out with. No, you work with the polar opposite. You're from big city, small town. You're from the East Coast, they're from the West Coast. They're from the Midwest, they're from Europe, Canada. They got a GED, you got a PhD. And so it's the workforce is different than the world that you're in right now. Everybody's
Mhm.
going to be changing. And the other thing too is that's why I want you to find an industry that interests you. So when there's downtime or whatever, you have an interest in reading about that industry, which makes you a trusted advisor within your team. And management will notice this and they'll always go to you. And that's how I won my business relationships with a lot being a trusted advisor because I tried to know as much as possible. Even though I didn't like technology, I had an understanding of where were emerging trends, what's going to happen, and how can we grow the business and expand. When I handle, especially like Los Angeles, is so massive. It's like, hey, why wouldn't grow in East LA versus West LA versus the Valley versus the South Bay? And those are things that you have to understand what the differences are and how to deal with it. I mean, Hawaii is a cultural melting pot, and how do you deal over here versus in Vegas or whatever. So there's a lot for people to learn, and yeah, you bring up a big thing is the students aren't prepared. They might know the product inside out or the solution inside out, but how do you speak and relate to others in your field? And it's a weakness. And I got to say, that's why I'm talking about it, because it was a weakness for me too. I had a chip on my shoulder for a while. I'm like, I'll go out there and outsell anybody. I don't care. But sometimes, you say the wrong thing to the wrong person or whatever, and you can shoot yourself in the foot. So
Yeah,
I
you
try to
have to understand
especially
those
let
cultural
yeah.
differences. Yeah, those cultural differences are big if you are dealing with, people from across the country. And even if you're not, it's still somebody from Japan can be in Hawaii and that you're dealing with. That's not a big stretch of the imagination. I mean, people can be from all over and be planted somewhere else. And so, yeah, knowing how to speak to people, but it's also understanding the culture once you get in it, past the in it, let's say they get hired. It's understanding the culture once they get in it. It's understanding their job and understanding what other people do. And part of that responsibility is on the employer to integrate them into the workforce and orientate them well. But you also have to take responsibility for yourself. And if somebody isn't giving you what you need, you have to ask for it and not be demanding, but do it in the right way, in the right manner, up the chain of command with starting with your manager or your lead. So, I mean, there's so much for them to learn and it's fascinating and it's exciting, but they have to have the right attitude about it. And you go to work, right? You're being paid to do a job. You got to do the job and you should do it to the best of your ability, whether you like it or not. Do it to the best of your ability until you move on and do something else, right? Because all of that, there's a saying, nothing's ever lost. And you know that because we've lived long enough to know that, right? That nothing is ever lost. Something you learned on a job you may not have liked is going to be something that you're going to be able to use on another job down the line. So nothing's ever lost. So take advantage of the opportunities that you have to learn as much as you can about your position, about your team, about your company and its business and the way that it works. And you will be a very valued employee if you continue to do a good job.
Yeah, and here's the thing. A couple of things that you point out. It's okay. So you get the employee first. Hiring somebody is difficult, and hiring the right person. Again, we're talking about percentages here because they can hire anybody, but why they hire this person? And when they hire this person, bring them in, explain to them the culture if they haven't figured it out, and just make sure you have good one-on-ones or actually team meetings to explain to them what's happening, what's going on, how to work with their direct manager. And actually, my next book, I write that extensively because sometimes you can deal with some of the best management in the world, and sometimes you can deal with the worst management in the world, and you have to understand and do that. As for the person who's sitting there who's not interested in fiddling around on their little iPhone all day, they chose the wrong field. And because the fact is, if they were interested in what they were doing, they would be watching little TikTok videos about cats dancing or something stupid. They'd be sitting there trying to learn and trying to improve themselves. And that's what it boils down to. 52% of students get their, you love this one. This is stats amazingly horrible. 50% of students, 52%, receive their career advice from the family. If they're all in healthcare, like you were talking about, what does
Mm,
anybody in healthcare know about cybersecurity? You know what I mean? I mean, well, unless they're in cybersecurity and in healthcare
unless they're in
and
that
IT.
team, yeah.
But the fact is, I mean, that's the other thing too is the students aren't getting good career advice and information. And I always tell the students, I'm like, if you decide to go to college, great. If you don't decide to do it, great. I don't care either way. Whatever you just choose. But I want you to like I spoke about earlier, speak well, write well. If you're having problems with career decisions, career exploration, I go not only go take the classes on those, but hire a career coach like yourself because you have to understand you need unbiased advice. You go to Uncle Bill because he owns, 3 stores or whatever. He's always going to tell you, oh yeah, the hardware industry is the greatest because blah, blah, blah. Now, rosy glasses. I also tell them, get away from the family. Find people that can give you clear and concise advice that have no connection to you that will give you good understanding. I was tell speak to at least 5 to 7 people in the industry that interest you and speak to a few that have left. You always hear like, oh yeah, be a lawyer, be a doctor, now it's like, run a CEO of an IT company, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Nothing wrong with any profession, but you better know what you're getting yourself into or you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot and you're wasting 2, 5, 7 years in an industry that you want to feel like you have to like because they pay so much on the back end, finance, tech, whatever. But a lot of companies, industries pay, especially if you're good at it.
Hmm. Yeah. It's one thing to be good at something, but do you want to do it all day long for a career? That may not be what you want to do, and you really need to be clear on that. But it's not just the being on the job, it's all the prep that they did in school for that career. So that's years and years and years of their life that they could have been doing and focusing in on something that's going to bring them joy. And so a lot of the things that I've read with the younger generation is they are more rounded in their outlook and what they want. They want a job that is going to give them that feel good feeling. They want to do something that makes a difference. They want to see the product of their work. They want to work for an employer that's concerned about the environment or some other, aspect other than making money. And I do admire that about the younger generation rather than just looking for a job where you can go to work and do the job and leave. They're looking for more. And I think employers are being, hopefully, a little more in tune to that. But the thing is, they have to do their research. You can apply for a job anywhere, and it's so easy these days. And one of the reasons I think, and I know so, that employers, that recruiters are overwhelmed is because they get, it used to be, because I've been in recruiting a long time, now talent acquisition, a very long time, when people used to, have to type up something, print it out, put it in an envelope and send it. Well, now it's a touch of a button, right? And so it makes it easy for you to apply this stuff. And you can tell as a recruiter whether somebody's read the job description or not because, you've got somebody that may not have a college degree applying to be a physician assistant that needs all this medical background, right? So, when you are doing that they're just reading titles and applying and click and click and
Or they're
submit.
using their good friend AI is going to save the world. Yeah. So I actually, that's another one I go over too with the whole networking angle is a book by President Bollinger called the 20-minute networking meeting. And it's amazing. It's very well done. I always inform the students, I can tell you about networking. I have a bunch of videos on networking, but I also suggest picking up a book and reading it too. Go to old school. And if you have no money, go to the library and request the book. But what they clearly and concisely said is not only what you're stating, but they also said that 70% of opportunities are found because of connections, obviously. So I always say, go out and the more people you talk to in the industry that interests you will help you out to understand that industry and understand the occupation. I go, that's one way. I go, you can network, go to trade shows and meet people in that industry and occupations that interest you. Other things are professional organizations, associations. I go, so you can find these people in the groups that you want to do. That's how you start networking, building a network. And if you're in school, that's the best time to do it because you got to have some downtime here and there to get some connections. So you can go on LinkedIn, you can go out there or your alumni network and reach out to people that are doing what you're interested in and
Mhm.
if it's the right path for you. So that's one aspect of it. But again, I also talked to is like the making sure that that interests you because you have to speak to people that have left. Why is this so great? The thing that always shocked me, and I write about it in the next book, is like you said, the amount of schooling is people in the medical field. If you're going to be a doctor and you spend, undergrad and then you go to medical school and then, when they do the, what is it called? A couple of years when they do an, oh, I can't
Internship.
intern,
Very
is it an
medical.
internship they call it or whatever, but when they have to go out there be like a first or 2 year school, a doctor out there in the real world, all that time, and then after like a decade they leave. You're like, whoa! I mean, a lot of them do pivot into careers that are really interesting and things that they enjoy, but they spend so much time. It's like, why would somebody leave the medical field? Because over the last, decade or two, you get letters saying, "Oh, I'm leaving," and it's just like it's crazy. So that's why I say, have to prepare early. You don't want a lot of time waste. And these days, you don't want a lot of money wasted either. It's
No, it's so
MD,
expensive.
but you don't want to drop a half a mil and you're already behind the eight ball when you were just find out that you happen to find, an industry, something else, and so you have to really narrow it down. And when you're younger, it's the best time. It sucks when you
Mhm.
transition when you're 45 or so, but if you can do your homework as much as you can between the ages of 15, 25, then you know what? You'll be in a lot better shape than people who
You
are
know?
dilly-dallying right now. And I speak to a lot of students who are dilly-dallying. They're not doing anything. They're not reading books about their industry. They're not talking to people in the industry. They're not, networking, as we say. It's just it's shocking. So all that data will be coming out now.
Yeah. I would recommend that they also see if they can do some job shadowing. It's just a day.
The best question. You got me. I can go with that. But keep going. Yep.
Yeah, just reach out. You can maybe do it through if you're in college, you can do it through your career center. If you are a high school student, I mean, businesses look very favorably on that. Anyway, the good businesses do. They want people in their industry. They want people to come to them and they want to, put their best foot forward. So if you have to start somewhere and you don't know where to start, contact someone in HR, see if it's a possibility. If you can do a 4-hour job shadowing, it's something that we used to get very excited about. And then also with your summer jobs, internships, try to get an internship in your field. If not, get an internship someplace else, but get a job so you can get a feel of what work is like. And even at that, it may be slightly different because we never want to scare people, right? Our internship programs they're very cleverly crafted to make sure that the interns are getting good experiences and hopefully with the right people in their company. But there's lots of ways for you to make sure that this is something you want to pursue.
So check this out. So a lot you threw a lot of good ones out there. Shadowing. Could you believe there's no national data about shadowing? So I think so I asked, that was one of the questions to the students. Have you shadowed in the career that you plan to get into? And the number was like either 30 or 33% or something like that. It was a low number, but at least it's getting them to think about it. And without question, shadowing is key. Not only internships, I always tell them, I go, internships, part-time work, volunteer, summer job. I don't care what it's called or what you do, but go in there and meet people in that industry. Because you can ask them
Mhm.
not only what are the pros about that career, what are the cons? And I go into that when I speak to the students too, is what are the cons of working in that field? And it's funny because one of the points I make was student goes into an interview after a school, high school or college, and the hiring manager looks and goes, "No internships, huh?" And then the student goes, "Yeah, I got a summer job." And then, "Oh, that's what we used to do anyway. Nobody did internships back in the 80s and 90s or whatever." But
Yeah,
here's
it was
another
very
angle
serious.
too is talking about the workforce. Robert Wright, the old labor secretary back in like Clinton era and stuff like that. So I think around, like the late 90s, whatever, in 2000 or something like that. Read an article in the New York Times. And he said that he goes, prior to graduate school, go into the line of work you want to do and get a gopher job, get the lowest job on the totem pole so you can have an understanding of what it's like in that field. And then he said, he goes, go to any city in America. It doesn't matter. He goes, the lowest job's the lowest job. And he goes, the secondary cities will be less expensive to live in. You know, Liberty, Cleveland, Cincinnati, why not? But get the information. What is it like? Because everybody has this, or rose-colored glasses on. It's great to work at X, Y, and Z company. It's like, you have no idea. You've never spent a day in there. You have no idea what it's work to work at that company. It's all guesswork. Well, I saw it on YouTube. That doesn't mean anything. Until you put your shoes, until you've lived in that life, or shadowed a part-time work or done something in that industry, I mean, you'll see how it really is. But these little glimpses of a 1 minute and stuff like that, they're helpful, but no, you got to spend days and hours.
You really need to do as much as you can to find out what it's really like. Let's switch our focus a little bit. If someone is a young adult and they're overwhelmed about starting their career,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
Well, it'd be a lot of things that we went over. I would sit there and tell them to, one, make sure they're doing well in the school. So first, that's imperative. But after that, they really have to narrow down. I always tell them, not jobs or occupations, industries. The reason why is you can bounce an industry. You can start in sales, go to operations, go to marketing, whatever. But the fact is, it's like jumping job to job to job in different industries can be tough because you go build a network yourself in there. So I always tell them, I go, find 3 industries that interest you and start testing out there. And one example that I used in my first book was amazing. I went to physical therapy back when I lived in Los Angeles. And my physical therapist, they usually just babble about nonsense. And so I was like, hey, I go, that check-in guy over there at the front desk, he's very organized, amazing. And she goes, oh, you're going to love his story because you're into careers. I'm like, okay. He graduated school. I wasn't sure if it was high school or college. And he did either 4 or 3 different industries within a year to see which one he'd liked to focus on that. So I don't obviously doing healthcare then, and he's going to start doing a couple others. And I think that's the way to do it, is to go out there and part-time job it, get involved, but get into that industry some way, somehow. And I was telling them, if they don't hire you, whatever, say, hey, I'll volunteer 3 to 5 on Friday. I'll clean up the trash for free. I don't care. I just want to get to know and meet people in that industry. But then again, they can also tie into associations, and they can go to associations and speak to people in the industry. If you're in an industry association, you actually love your industry. The sad part is you're not going to find people who are against it. I tell them, go to trade shows. I go, it always boils down to, I mean, it's great that you read books. It's great that you watch videos, but you have to be in the mix. You have to speak with people, unless you're going to end up in a career or a job, an industry that you despise it. And that's what happened to me. I just did it for the money. And so, if the student doesn't go out there and do their homework and understand what they're getting themselves into, they're going to be shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, very true. But I like the fact that you are telling them to be proactive, because you have to be. And, you come from a technology background. There is a world of change happening in the world of work because of technology and AI. Everything is being turned on its head, right? So I just coached a young graduate he was in Spain. He's now in France. But, his interview skills and the resume that they put together for him or had him put together was awful. Yeah, it needed a whole lot of work. And then I had to, coach him on interviewing. So they're not quite getting, if you've only worked in academia, you don't really know how the private sector works.
Oh, without question. Without question. I'll go into that if you want me to. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's, unless you have some good advice from people that are close to you. And I know you say, don't go to your family, but if you've got a family full of professionals, you can talk to them. They know how it works. And he did. But the other caveat to that whole thing, if you're thinking about it, is what students listen to the parents. They have this bias that you don't know what you're talking about. I felt 100%. That way about my parents. I'm sure you felt that way about yours.
Oh, without question.
So it's easier for them to hear it from somewhere else. And so he came to me by way of a former coworker of mine. But it was very good to see that he had excellent skills, excellent technical skills, good language skills. He was a very amenable guy, and he knew what he wanted because his parents had this company, and he wanted to stay in that. They had a gaming company, an educational gaming company. There was a company in France he wanted to work for. He got the job. So if you know, you got to be clear on where you got to go. If you don't have a direction, you can end up anywhere, right? It's like if you're driving and you don't have a destination, you can end up anywhere that you think looks good. And so you have to be really focused and clear on where you want to go. And you got to check it out if you're a young person as much as you can. And it happens for adults too, right? People interview, all the interviews I've done over the course of my life, people think that they want this, but if they don't do the research and really dig deep into that, even in the interview process, you'll end up taking a job that doesn't suit you because it's in a company that doesn't suit you or the manager doesn't suit you. And your experience of any company is the direct relationship you have with your manager and your coworkers, but mostly the manager because they're they're running the show, right? So you really have to do your research.
Yeah. So it's funny. A lot of the things you pointed out was, you're right. And I write about that a lot in the next book about the connections of management, and make sure that you do your homework on who you'll be working with in management, especially the management style, right? The cohorts do have some power in some issues, connections with you and all like that, but it usually boils down to management. And I did that one time, but I think a lot of people they settle because they get tired of the interview process, and they're like, you know what? Okay, I'll just take this gig and see how it goes. I was in a company and it was a go-go company. I just got burnt out. And I'm like, I was promised this world of this cushy gig. And I'm like, I'll do the cushy gig. And it ended up boiling down to manager was okay, best. My cohorts were terrible to work with. And so eventually it's like, I was out after a short term, and going from being a star player to an honest star player was a big issue too. So I think people should they have to do a lot of homework. And I was telling them, I go, you interview with somebody, you best walk in there and know everything. I want you to know which middle school they went to, junior high school they went to, what high school they went to, what teams they follow, what do they know. That ties into a book. I read Morrison's book. I can't recall of it, Shirley Morrison's book or whatever, but she was doing interviewing over in England for working for technology sales, and it boiled down to she started calling around and talking to her network. She goes, "What do you know about hiring with Jack?" And they go, blah, 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 good guy, nothing wrong with him, all like this. And, oh, by the way, he's a big fan of Liverpool. And she's like, and she's from America, so she doesn't know what Liverpool is. And she's like, oh, okay. So she did research on Liverpool. And one of the final questions, Jack goes, anything else? The interviews went well, anything else you guys goes, Jack, and I want to tell you one more thing. I want Liverpool to win the FA Cup. And Jack's like, you're right. But it's just little things like that. Know what you're getting yourself into.
Mhm.
To tie back to the young man in Spain in the resume, and this floored me. I wrote an article about this because there was a graph from higher education. Okay. Higher education is this nice graph and all the problems that the students are having and where they find the biggest issue. Of course, they told about the problems, but never the solutions. Nobody wants to write about solutions. So that's what I ended up doing in my blog. I got the whole graph narrowed down. But the first one was resume. The students need resume help. And I'm like, really? This is 101. This is the easiest thing. When I was in college, I worked in the tech center and, just hanging out there, word processors back then. And I was writing resumes for my student friends, right? And I'm like, resume, that's difficult to write. You gotta be kidding me. I go, there's 5 billion examples online, blah, blah, blah. But you're right. My friend's daughter recently went to a resume specialist too. And I'm thinking to myself, really? It's like you went to a good school, you got an amazing degree. But the fact is, it's like, it's overwhelming to me that they can't get the resume resolved. You're right, at the career center, but then you go back to the career center. Pros and cons of the career center. The career center is there to help you. And the statistics show that either 25% from one organization, I think with NASET, students go there. Another one's 75%. So you're right. All this data is coming across us, and is it true or false? But the catch of the career centers are they're usually overwhelmed, understaffed, underpaid without question, and they're either 22 or 82. If they're 22, they just got out of school, they're trying to get, start their career, which is great, but they're extremely young and they haven't been in the workforce, like you say. 82, they're ready to retire, or 72 or 62, whatever, and they're done and they don't care. So you have that issue. And so I'm like, okay, and I explained to the students resumes how to resolve that. And then finally, career exploration was the second one. And I'm like, why isn't career exploration number one? But the point about it was all these basic issues that you and I just like scoff at because it's so easy to resolve, that these were all the problems that higher education organizations said that the students need help with. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But nobody wrote a resolution. So it irked me so much that not only did I read resolution and put it up on a blog, but it's also one of the appendixes in my next book, because I'm sitting myself going, this is so basic. And it just drives me nuts because the students are out there complaining. Education is still not doing anything. Industry is still complaining and nothing's getting done. Industry has the money. So industry ponying up, put people like you and I out there in the schools that are trying to help out the situation. And it's truly, it's such a problem here in America that, I'm just shocked all the time when, you go and speak to the students and it's the same thing. And people can say, oh yeah, the world is changing. No, it's the same issues 40 years ago. I don't care. Students are still not prepared for a workforce. Thank God for AI in the sense it might help them out and save some time, but you're right. But it's pumping out garbage. So,
Well, yeah, you can't depend on it completely because it.
No. You tell your an article, how many errors. It's, Ajo, I want 2 seconds before you like sweat. So I'm going to go to Seattle and I'll hopefully speak to a couple of schools up there. And I was looking at one of the schools and I'm like, how many students go there? So you put up you ask the enrollment for this college, and AI was the first one to respond. 671. I go, really? I go, it seems like the biggest school. Let me double check. So I did a couple more researches. No, 6,171. It's like, really, AI? But somebody out there else is believing it. So yeah, if people are not questioning AI, you're a B.
We can't take the face value all the time. Mike, what guidance would you give to parents, educators, or mentors supporting young people?
Okay, well, that's 3 buckets. So let's go with parents. When it comes to parents, I'd say question education big time. Please understand. And please believe me. I write books about it. I read books about it. And people, I go, how many other people in career readiness read the competitors' books and endorse the competitors' books? You know what I mean? Like Scott Carlson, Hacking College was a great book I recently read. I would tell the parents, 1, please understand, your students are not getting any career readiness. That means they're getting no information about careers in school unless they're going to career and technical education, which is a small percentage. Okay, some schools are doing it, but just be aware and ask those questions. How are they preparing the student, and why are they determining what the student's going to in the career? And is that student speaking to people in those industries before they make the decision? When I was a young guy in the working class, college was just like, oh, you don't talk about it unless you say, I'm going to be an engineer because it sounds like a manly job. And so everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm going into engineering. But once you get into school, you're like, I'm going to get killed in engineering. So you flip it out to something else. But the students really have to understand it's not a guess game. You have to put a lot of time and effort into it. Part 2, as for education, oh my God, it's just like, I'll give you an example. My alma mater at UMass, finally, they opened up one of the campuses and they're really going to focus on like career readiness in that school for the first generation students. It's noble and great, but it's a big school. They should start expanding it even further. And the saddest thing is when I see schools like Middlesex Community College have all these career exploration classes, and I see other schools within that state, and I look and I go, but this school has so many career exploration classes. Why doesn't the other? And they're not looking at successes. They're like, we're just doing this, this, and this. Because you go into school and you're like, City, what do you want to be? Mechanical engineer. And the admin goes, awesome. You're like, wow, it pays well. It does. Let's sign you up, $100,000. But they never ask why. Why did you make the decision? Have you spoke to anybody in that industry? And so that I see this, and I'm trying to get people to question why people want to go into an industry until the student comes back with, I did this research. And one student in my next book, she's going into law. And my questions were boom, boom, boom. And she's like, I took a educational high school. I've been working at law firm this way. I've done it. And she nailed it. And I'm like, okay, you won. But other
Mm.
students are like, I mean, I work as a
Right, I know.
barback on the weekends. And I'm like, whoa. There was a third part. What was the third one I missed? It was parents,
And
educators.
the last was mentors.
Oh yeah! Wow! Wow! Are you checking my messages lately? Okay, so here's the story of mentoring because I got this. Is actually by Scott Carlson of Hacking College. He posted a LinkedIn today about mentorship and how important it is and all that. And I'm like, Scott, I agree. It is important and it's helpful. And a lot of successful people I've seen in life have had mentors at an early age. But there's a caveat to everything. And articles I've read, they like talk about mentorship and all like that. And they're like, oh yeah, you get the local neighbors and all like that. But what if you grow up in a low income, first working class community like I did? Everybody does the same 4 or 5 gigs, but you want to do something else, you can't get a mentorship in the community. So that's out the door. So what I explained on the LinkedIn response to this card, and I write about it in my next book, is trusted advisors. Mentors are great, but a lot of people from first gen, lower income, working class won't be able to get that, but they might meet a professor who can be a mentor in that one industry. So when use that instead of a mentor, use as a trusted advisor and have a few. So you could have a trusted advisor. I always tell the students, I go, I don't want it to be a 22-year-old friend's brother who's got a nice haircut. No way. I go, I want you, it's minimum 25. I want you to go 30, 35, 40. People who've been in the game for X amount of years. And I go, please, students, please understand that nothing has changed since I was younger. And at one time I was younger, believe it or not. And I told them, I go, talk to somebody about finance or as many people as you can about that are older. And then speak, again, outside of your family, but anybody actually. But then speak to somebody about career and career options. You need to have people. So when you run into a situation, you have an issue with your manager, you need to speak to somebody who's in that industry who can help you out with that. And that's why I go, so don't push people to be mentors because they might not want to talk about relationships or other issues in life that you want to talk about, but they might be amazing in 1 or 2 subjects that can crush it. And so I call them trusted advisors. And I still have them these days. I'll reach out to people who have a total opposite beliefs of me and say, here's a scenario. It's kind of driving me nuts. What is your thoughts on this? And they'll say, okay, let's hash it up. And you're like, okay, I didn't think of it that way. And you should always talk to people with juxtaposition mentality of you. If you think that cheese is the best food, you should talk to somebody who thinks chicken's the best food. You know what I mean? Talk to people that have polar thoughts than you, opposite thoughts than you, or so
the wider exposure, basically.
Yeah, you have to open your mind up and open your brain up and open your thoughts up to others. You're not right on everything. You know what I mean? You can't, you don't know this or that. And you have to understand that the smartest people I've dealt with in life are the people that have clearly said, you know what? I really know little. It's the people that think they know a lot, truly know a little. So if anybody thinks they're super intelligent, kind of avoid them in a sense. Speak to people who are trying to improve, understand, do their readings, doing their homework, accept failure, and deal with failure and have to understand that because it gets tiring when you talk to somebody and you're like, oh, I invested in a video when it was $1. Oh, my Apple stock I invested in when it was half a cent. Yeah. Oh, come on. Give me the nonsense like that. Tell me everything. Real estate you lost money on or something like that. Talk real world stuff. Yeah.
If you had one piece of advice for young students, because we're running out of time here.
Well, one piece of advice. First, do as much homework as you possibly can about what industries interest you. We've gone over it a few times, but making sure they really, really do their homework. I want them to read about people in the industry, talk to people in the industry one-on-one. I don't want them to do, the texting to somebody or something like that. I want them to go to their office one-on-one, bring them a coffee. If they're healthy, bring them an apple. Just be nice. Listen more than you talk and figure out what interests you the most. You're naturally talented at something. What is it? Are you going to be the best demographer in Baltimore or the best CPA in Omaha? You can find something that interests you and you can do amazing at it, but just don't sell out for the big buck because you'll probably make it down the road anyway. But you don't want to be miserable for 30 plus years in a field just to make money. There's no joy about that. So I say, if you can do as much homework as you can, the younger you are, the better. And the other thing too is the older people will see that you are showing leadership skills. And with that, it's always a plus too, because you never know, you can call on these people for references, ideas, and suggestions. So there's a lot out there. And always feel free to check my website, check my YouTube page and stuff like that. I'm always writing about this stuff, writing the books about it. And so there's extensive amounts. So and hopefully that answers the question in a roundabout way.
What's your website, Mike? Give us your website.
It's careersbythepeople.com. So if they Google my name, they're going to come up with me or the comedian in Pittsburgh. And I'm not the comedian in Pittsburgh. I'm sure he's a lot funnier than I am. But that's Mike Wysocki. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Careers by the People. My book's called Careers by the People. My next book's called Careers by the People. And, but you'll see what all the information is about.
All right. Now put it in the liner notes too.
Thank you.
All right. Mike, it's been my pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for taking your time to give us your insights of what you found out speaking to people about their careers.
So thank you very much. I thoroughly appreciate it. It's always a joy to get a chance to talk and, the forums to speak about what's going on out there in the States and how we can improve career readiness as well as education in the States and improve the workforce. So again, I appreciate your time, your thoughts, and thank you for letting me on your podcast.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm going to describe someone and I want to know if it reminds you of someone. Maybe you. You've been looking for a job for a while. You're a strong leader with years of experience, but your job search is stalled. You're frustrated. You're not getting interviews, or maybe you are getting interviews, and the interviews that you're receiving, you're not doing a good job in them. You walk away and they didn't go as you expected. Now, each time this happens, it chips away at your confidence. You're losing valuable time. And you're scared that you're going to have to settle for a job that's beneath your capabilities. If this is you, you need clarity. Now, if you want a resume and a LinkedIn profile that finally sound like you, that come across clear, confident, and differentiated. If you want to do if you want to do interviews, where you can speak about your leadership, impact, and strengths without second-guessing yourself. Or maybe you want recruiters reaching out because your positioning is sharp and compelling and draws them in. What about doing a job search that feels structured instead of scattered, strategic, and aligned with your goals? If you're ready for that kind of clarity, contact me on LinkedIn and put in the keyword clarity, and I'll reach out to you and we'll figure out what next steps are, okay? Now, I want to thank you for listening because your support's a blessing. Now, if you enjoyed the podcast, give us a positive rating on Apple. And remember, new podcasts are released every 2 weeks on the first and third Wednesdays. And share this with your friends, please. Now, before you go, let's speak victory over you. No matter what it feels like, you've got a bright future. Good breaks are looking for you, and new doors are about to open. But one thing you have to do is to believe it. Believe it, believe it, believe it. Now, until next time, take care.